Art, do you have a photograph that especially stands out in your mind beyond the very famous ones that we know of the father and sons in the dust storm and the skull? Is there some photograph or some assignment especially that you recall that you think you care to share with us?
Well, of course, there were many, but probably one that I felt that I had established a relationship between the effectiveness of photography and some direct action was a situation in Butler County, Missouri, where I found in traveling through that area that a number of tenant farmers had been evicted from their farms and their belongings and all their worldly possessions were piled up along the side of the road. And nobody in Washington or anywhere else was aware of this situation. And I felt it was a disgraceful condition and that something should be done about it. So I took some photographs, sent them back to Washington, and also telephoned Roy Stryker and told him about this situation. And there was immediate action, intervention on the part of the government in Washington to do something about the plight of these people. And I think that there was a case where photography or the action of a photographer affected a large number of people favorably.
My trip through this part of the country was not by car, it was on a freight train. I was then uh, I was then doing a coverage for OWI on rail transportation in the United States, and I had all kinds of clearances and permissions with me from the Railroad Association and from various government agencies, passes and so on, to ride freight trains of this Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe from Chicago out to the West Coast. It was one of the best assignments I could ever have dreamed of. And I rode freights in the cabooses and sometimes in the engines forward. I got off with the railroad men. I stayed in their quarters. I lived with them for a month. And my stay in Amarillo consisted of several days here photographing the roundhouses and the freight yards and the railroad facilities, repair shops, and railroad workers working here in Amarillo. That was part of a wonderful assignment that I had. Those pictures are still, of course, in the Library of Congress, and they're available.
I'd like to introduce now Russell Lee. Russell Lee was born in Ottawa, Illinois, and was trained as a chemical engineer at Lehigh University. Just 1 month before the stock market crash of 1929, Russell and his first wife Doris moved to San Francisco, where she studied painting. He began to take photographs in 1935 when he became dissatisfied with his ability to draw. During the summer of 1936, a friend informed him of the existence of the Resettlement Administration's historical section and the work of its photographers. The departure of Carl Meidens to join Life magazine created an open position in the RA historical section, which Roy Stryker filled by hiring Russ. After about a month in Washington, he embarked on his first field trip for the RA. He ended up spending 9 months on the road documenting a variety of people and places, including Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. He has estimated that in nearly 6 years he worked for the RA and FSA. He spent all but 6 months on the road photographing. Among his best-known works are his Pie Town series, his thorough coverage of San Augustine, Texas, and his coverage of black neighborhoods in Chicago. His work for the Resettlement Administration and for the Farm Security Administration shows that he was quite adept at photographing people in their homes and places of work, thanks in part to his mastery of flash techniques. After contributing thousands and thousands of images to the FSA file, he went on to photograph for the Office of War Information.
How did you get those fabulous shots of the families in their homes? Specifically, I think the shot that Mr. Rothstein took of the kids reading the newspaper on the floor, and Mr. Lee's couple shots of the Christmas dinner and things like that. How did you get yourself into that family life in such a way that they seem to accept you so easily?
Well, I can answer that. In the case of the Christmas dinner, I was in western Iowa, and I'd been told about some of the needs for resettlement administration grants out there. The people were in dire, desperate straits. And I went to the resettlement supervisor there, and he gave me a list of some people to see. And I simply went out to see Mr. Earl Pauley, and I just spent some time there. And I said, I've been sent out by the resettlement administration supervisor. And I sat down with him and got an idea of just the background of his several last years, about the returns from the farm and so forth. And the next day he said, well, it's Christmas, and why don't you come out? So I did. And I went out there and took that picture.
So I'd just like to introduce Marianne Post-Wolcott now. Marianne was hired as an FSA photographer during the fall of 1938, more than 3 years after the project began. After spending a period of time acquainting herself with the FSA historical section photographic files and getting to know Roy Stryker and his recommended readings very thoroughly, she set out on her first photographic trip to the bituminous coal mining areas of West Virginia. The photographs resulting from this trip quickly established her skills in communicating with and winning the rapport of those she photographed. Occasionally, being a woman, often alone in the field, presented difficulties, and maybe you can discuss that a little bit. The great majority of her work was reported in the South, where she documented a wide range of people's social, economic, and living conditions. She also photographed in New England and as far west as Montana. Marianne remained with the FSA historical section until 1942, when she found it difficult to maintain a household, have children, and work on the road as a photographer, all at the same time.
I think I'll start back even a little bit further, which explains part of the reasons for my interest in getting into the FSA program. I'm often asked, why did I leave the field? Why didn't I become a fashion photographer or something else? Well, when I was in Europe at that time, for a number of years before I joined the FSA Photo Project, I had been interested and active in movements to correct the obvious social and economic and political injustices. My first teaching job after I returned to this country was in a Massachusetts mill town, or before I went, actually, the mill town job. And it was in a private school for children of the mill owners and top supervisors. And I lived in the boarding house where most of the single workers lived, the mill workers. And there I saw and was confronted with the vast gaps socially and economically between the classes, the haves and the have-nots, the employers and workers. And this was an eye-opening and experience which was really too conspicuous to be ignored, because I was working for the mill workers, the owners of the mills. So I soon became bored with my job as a newspaper photographer, because it didn't give me any opportunity to get into that kind of thing. And that's why I went to Steiner and said, what else is there? Well, I really wished to, in my job with FSA, to effect social and political changes through visual means, and to help show the rural conditions as they were, directly and honestly, not to change anything, to make honest photographs, showing conditions to shock and arouse and inform the American public. Also, to encourage efforts to effect social justice and to eradicate some of the inequalities. Besides this, we, of course, recorded anything which was significant to American culture.